what, where it can go wrong. But, John William, Hetty, Hattie, your school library should have some of those really in as the staff CPD section. You can also, there's something called the What Works Clearinghouse. Now that's American, and it's more focused on interventions. So it's not necessarily as useful for an individual classroom teacher, but there are some interesting things on there. In this country, there's the Best Evidence Encyclopedia, which is run by the Institute of Effective Education at the University of York. And again, it's quite a lot focused on primary, but there are other things. And they tend to focus on interventions because sometimes it's easier to get clear evidence of a specific intervention done in a specific way. But it does give ideas. If you really want to sort of get into educational research, then there's just been a new scheme where every public library should have access to research papers. So there will be a terminal, there should be a terminal in your local public library through which they can access the research papers that universities can access. So it's really, if you read, if you see somebody on Twitter tweets a paper, you can get it through the local library if you need to. If you don't want to tweet, ICANN has PDF, which obviously nobody would do because that would be copyright and things. So you can get hold of, peer-reviewed journal papers freely through the public library as well. So we support your library, which is always a plus. So we mentioned that it needs to be measurable. We need to know what effect it has. Otherwise, it's just trying something out for no purpose. What you collect will depend on what your question is. If it's something that's attitudinal, then you'll want to do more sort of qualitative attitude questions, so questionnaires, maybe case studies, interviews, which are things that you can do. If you want more specific data, if you want to know whether a particular strategy improves answering 6-mark or 12-mark questions in your subject, then obviously numerical data is going to be more useful. The sort of things that 4 comments is observing, either you observing the class or somebody coming in to observe the children in your class, not to observe you, but to choose focus children, 2 or 3 focus kids, and observe them and see how they're behaving, what's happening on their behaviour. Using interview focus groups, questionnaires, and testing. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. Now, there's a link on the PowerPoint when you get it, which is to Plymouth University. They've got a big section on action research, and they go through each of the types of evidence that you might collect and the positives and negatives. So things like interview and focus groups, you can get really, really rich data, really good information, but if you want it transcribed, it takes forever. I don't know that any English teachers, in English, A-level English, I think, and GCSE English, they have to transcribe a conversation, and it takes hours just for sort of 5 minutes of conversation because you get too. So interviews are great, you get really rich data, but it takes forever to research it. Testing is great, it's quick, but it doesn't. If you're looking at attitude, it's no use. It doesn't help you there. So there's a lot there. Obviously, I would normally spend about 2 or 3 hours looking at this, so it's very brief. But if you are interested, there is a link and you can follow it up. So, at my place of work, we use an action planning template, which is very simple. I'm quite a grid sort of person, so this is the template that I ask people to use. There is also to click forward a bit, there is, from the fantastic Ross Morrison McGill and Stephen Turney, Teacher Toolkit and Leading Learner, there, if you're a mind map kind of person and like diagrams, then that might be, it has almost exactly the same things, but I like grids and I'm not really a good, I don't like going round and backwards and things. But it's on Ross Morris and the Girls website, and it's freely downloadable. So if you like that sort of thing, it has exactly the same ideas, but it's just prettier in many ways. So what I'd like you to do is just to have, we've got officially about 3 minutes left, but just have a think about one of the questions maybe that you had a think of earlier, and look at what you might want to put in those boxes. And I don't think we've really got time to sort of ask questions of each other, but that's what we would normally do, is you'd sort of think of a question, you'd start filling this in, and then you'd have a critique of somebody asking you questions and saying, okay, you've said it was year 10, which particular groups, why have you chosen that group? Is that really the best group? Have you got a comparison group we could use? So I'll give you a few minutes just to sort of have a think and just to look at the structure of that, so that you can maybe think how a question would work on there. Good place to start. Use some of this picture. A really good place to start is actually the girls who visit the bed books. Yeah, I've had a look. And they can one of them, which is the one with the row equals R over L. They can make out 7 things in your classroom. What type of jobs would you use that? Waves or something. What's the point of this? I mean, I've had a couple of people do action research on integrating just with careers and and they found that, you know, more maternity appears to increase the take of those subjects because kids can see the importance of them. So a really good place to start is those 7 things, and one of them is the questioning or group. A lot of it covers across subjects, I think. It's not specific, but so that's a good place. And if you want to sort of drop me an email, if you've got an idea of what to try out, right. So I'm quite happy to talk to you and help you with that. It's not a problem. Okay, any sort of thoughts or comments on this structure? Anybody got any really good questions that they think they'd like to try, that they'd like to share?
Well, I was really interested in some questioning, in particular when you start off a lesson, do a small questioning section with students, and if you the questioning encourages them to go really deep with their learning, but they will then implement that in everything else they do. But after that, without actually being, if you ask shallow questions to start with, they will access the rest of the information and look at shallow answers for it. I'd be really interested to see if you ask very probing questions in an initial sort of starter activity, but that would encourage students to
sort of go deeper
and look for the deeper answers or the deeper thinking.
Okay, so what sort of, how would you measure that, do you think? That's a challenge. I mean, things like you could look, if you're sort of looking at that, is looking at how they make links between ideas. That would maybe look at the sort of depth of their ideas. So in a piece of written work, if they make links, that might be something. Any other thoughts? Any thoughts about their links?
I'm in the middle of we're rolling out, I work in an FE college, and we're in the middle of looking at using QR codes and new technology like that to try to engage our students in more independent learning. I'm just thinking that some of our current first years have to do a piece of work at the beginning of their second year, which builds on the very first thing they did in first year. So potentially by having QR codes to link them to appropriate research from sites for them to use for that second piece of work, we could measure it then to see whether there has been an improvement. And I'm also looking at their referencing and paraphrasing skills, which are sadly lacking.
There are some materials on the National STEM Centre website called the Learning Skills in Science. Don't let that put you off. If you Google Learning Skills in Science on the National STEM Centre, it's a good set of materials that pick out skills that kids need in science, but some of them are about taking information from sources. The 6 skill areas, I think that's skill area 2.
We're also in the process of trying to commit the college as a whole to buy into and that will be the college's standard for referencing a commercial scheme, but the college isn't buying into it, but my head of department is thinking that we might do it, so it could actually become kind of second action research if it works for us.